and welcome to the Royalty Extra, where we take a closer look under the hood of the royal carriage. Joining me now is Victoria Murphy as we discuss a royal Christmas. Hi, Victoria.
Hi.
So this is going to be an important Christmas for the royal family, the first Christmas without the Queen. What can we expect?
I think you're right. This Christmas is going to be very important. It's very symbolic, obviously, King Charles III's first Christmas. We're going to see how he sees Christmases, royal Christmases taking place under his era. But also remember, it's the first Christmas that we will have had at Sandringham since 2019, because the past 2 years the Queen was at Windsor because of COVID. So there's this real kind of sense of bringing the family back together at Sandringham for the first time in a long time and showing us how they intend to carry on, and we are expecting to see that family gathering at Sandringham this Christmas following that tradition of many years.
So talk us through the traditions and the timeline. What traditions do the royals have over Christmas?
Well, Sandringham at Christmas is a tradition, but perhaps not as one that goes back as far as people might think. Christmas was at Sandringham in the reign of King George V, then King George VI, the Queen's grandfather and father, and in the early years of her reign. But actually, she then spent a lot of Christmases when her children were very young at Windsor Castle, and it wasn't until 1988 that Royal Christmas really returned to Sandringham and has been there ever since. So perhaps not as long as people think, but it's a very set sort of arrangement. There's 3 days, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day and Boxing Day, and they all have a very fixed set of activities that go on, beginning on Christmas Eve, which is the most formal part of the 3-day event. There's a formal dinner on Christmas Eve, and the royals open presents on Christmas Eve as well, following the German tradition. There's been a lot of, as I'm sure you're aware, information about what presents have been received over the years.
About sort of comedy presents. They don't go in for extravagant gifts.
Well, what do you know? Extravagant, they've got so much, haven't they? It makes sense that maybe they do things a little bit differently, but it's important to say that, you know, none of this has sort of ever been confirmed by members of the royal family exactly what has been given. So there's been talk of joke presents like a leopard print bath mat, a grow your own girlfriend kit, things like that. None of it's ever confirmed, but none of it's been denied either, and these have been said a lot. One thing we do know for sure is that Kate, Duchess of Cambridge, when she was the Duchess of Cambridge, gave an interview and spoke about her first Christmas at Sandringham and wondering what to get for the Queen, and she said that she was very unsure what the right thing was, but she decided to make some of her grandmother's chutney, make a chutney using her grandmother's recipe. And she said that she gave that to the Queen, and then the next day that was on the table. So showing that sort of personal touch there from the Queen.
I mean, I thought my Christmas list was giving me headaches. And for Christmas Day itself, you and I have spent many a year standing outside Sandringham to watch the royals walk to church on Christmas morning. Tell us about the traditions on Christmas Day.
So that's the very public part of Christmas Day for the royal family. But the day, of course, starts much earlier, and there's also an early morning church service, which we sometimes see photographs. We've seen pictures of the Queen arriving there privately for the service, quietly. There's not a public moment, but she's been pictured doing that. But the main public moment for the day comes for the 11 a.m. service at St Mary Magdalene Church. As you say, you've been there many times, I've been there many times. It's a really lovely atmosphere, isn't it?
Yes, the gates open, the public can flock in, the cafe's open, everyone's standing around having
very important.
a cup of tea or a coffee and a mince pie. And then there, because it's actually one of the times you get the closest to members of the royal family, isn't it?
It's true, and it feels very relaxed and very informal. I think everyone's in good spirits. It's Christmas Day. There is obviously a police presence and security there, but you do feel, as members of the public, do feel they can get very close to the royals. They come out of the gates of Sandringham House and walk past the public to go to the 11 a.m. service, but it's not until they come out on the way back that they actually stop and really greet people. And, you know, I've seen a lot of exchanges take place over the years, and you can tell that the royal family do really feel it's very important to take the time to stop and speak to people who've come on Christmas Day with their families, often children giving presents or flowers to the Queen. The Queen, we should say, arrived at the service by car.
Often accompanied by the Countess of Wessex, wasn't she?
Exactly. So she would choose someone to come in the car with her, and what was often interpreted as a sort of sign of her close relationship with the Countess of Wessex, that she would often take that role and accompany the Queen to church. And then when the Queen comes out, she would go and greet some of the young people lined up to give her flowers and gifts before getting back in the car and going back that way.
And the walking party used to be led by the Duke of Edinburgh.
Yeah.
It's striding out at the head of
That's
the family.
right. I mean, it's definitely less formal sort of order than you would see at other royal events where royals, you know, in ceremonies, for example, they're often lined up very rigidly in the order of succession or precedence. But this was because it's a family event, Christmas. You see extended members of the royal family there taking that walk to church. So the Queen would have her niece and nephew, Princess Margaret's children, and their children there as well. So it was a mixture of working royals and non-working royals, very much kind of gathering together for that family moment. So the order was never formal, but the Duke of Edinburgh would often come out first at the beginning and they would wander down. So it's a really lovely opportunity for people if they want to see the royal family, the whole royal family up close. And you could tell from being there for many years, it's a tradition for some people in the local area. They would come see the royal family on Christmas morning.
Maybe take the dog for a walk
Exactly.
and then head back for Christmas lunch.
Yeah.
What about this year's guest list? Because it has been reported that Sarah Ferguson is getting an invite to Christmas at Sandringham for the first time since the end of their marriage. Do you think we would see her and the Duke of York taking part in that very public procession, or might that be more of a private
I think that's
thing
really
behind closed doors?
One to watch. The Duke of York has not appeared in that public procession. I mean, obviously we've had COVID over the last 2 years, so it's a little bit difficult, but in 2019, just after he gave that interview about Jeffrey Epstein, he didn't appear publicly on that walk. And he hasn't appeared publicly at anything with the royal family since, despite the fact that we were told that Christmases and Trooping the Colour were examples of things that he might turn up at. But really, we've only seen him at the funerals, at Prince Philip's and the Queen's funerals. So I would be surprised if he was allowed to appear publicly, just because the royal family is so aware of the significant controversy that every time he appears causes, and he is very much out of the picture now as as far as the public face of the royal family goes. But I certainly wouldn't rule out Fergie being at the moment, because, you know, she's very much part of the family, even though they're divorced, and so I could see that, yes.
And they have grandchildren now, don't they? And she will certainly want to be with her children and her grandchildren for Christmas.
I think we might see over time the sort of makeup of who goes to Sandringham change slightly. There is a question to be asked as to whether or not King Charles's nieces and nephews will continue to spend every single Christmas with their uncle in the same way that they did with their grandmother. I think there's a different relationship there, perhaps, and I think over time we might see it evolve. We can't rule out, for example, that we could see Camilla's children and grandchildren go to Sandringham. Maybe not the public elements, but if her and Charles are spending Christmas there's no reason why that wouldn't happen. So I think over time we'll see the makeup change. I think this year what the royals will be very keen to do, what they've done very successfully since the Queen's death, is really kind of show us that continuity. So nothing that we've seen King Charles do has felt dramatically different to the Queen's reign. He's been performing his duties in a way that reminds us of the things that she did. And I think that this Christmas will be an example of that kind of family gathering that we are used to seeing.
And what about his first King's speech, his first Christmas message? There'll be a lot of attention on that, the words that he has to say. Will they be watching at Sandringham, do you think?
I would have thought so. I mean, they do watch the Queen's speech, we believe, every year after they've had their lunch. So yes, I mean, I think we're going to,
because it's a first.
Yes, and I think what we're going to see this time and time again over the next few months is everything that happens, it's the first. So there's a lot of interest in these things as they come along. And so, yes, the speech, as you know, is now pre-recorded in advance. And I think he will be very keen to strike the right tone with his first Christmas speech. The Queen used hers to sum up events throughout the year, but in a very sort of subtle way. She often alluded to themes or things that happened, but she was never went into sort of lengthy explanations about things, but she just used little hints here and there that people could pick up on. So I think also he'll be very keen to bring into it this idea of honouring his mother's memory, which is going to be very important because obviously this is his first speech and she did so many throughout her reign. She did one every single year of her reign except fun fact, 1969, which was when...
How was that?
Because they did this Fly on the Wall documentary in 1969 with the BBC. And so they were on screen a lot throughout that year. And so the Queen actually did a written message that year instead.
Brilliant, fascinating to hear your insights. Victoria Murphy, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on the Royalty Extra.
Thank you.